You're watching The ReadyWriter, a show where I get to speak to writers of all different genres, mediums, and experiences. The ReadyWriter. Are you ready? Hi, and welcome to another episode of The ReadyWriter. I'm your host, Casey Bell, and today's guest is Tony Selimi. Let's get this show started. All right, so first question I have for you, I see all that you do, all of your titles as far as dealing with business and entrepreneurship and dealing with finances. Was this a household you were raised in, or was everything you do now, was this something you learned along the way?
Well, my parents were restaurateurs, so I grew up in a farm, and pretty much both farming and entrepreneurship was something that I saw from a very early age, and observing my parents providing for the family, for the community, and being brought up in that entrepreneurial spirit, but in a place where education was only for wealthy children or children of a certain background. And my parents instilled in me how important is education. So therefore, I chose to be one of the best in whatever I was doing. And both I wanted to understand science, biology, technology, at the same time working in the farm and working in my parents' restaurants.
Awesome. So how did you get started exactly on the journey you're on now?
Well, I worked in the early 90s. I'm not sure if you remember, we had the Yugoslav war, civil war. So I was taken from university straight into the army to fight a civil war that deep down I despised, but that my life was saved for whatever miracle, God miracle, people miracle, all of that. I ended up homeless on the streets of London. So I spent the first almost like 8 years working every job I could to educate myself. And then I pursued a career in technology, and I created an incredible career. And in 2009 and 2008, in the first financial crisis, after having gone from homeless to a very successful senior technologist, suddenly the back then financial crisis made me rethink all of this work that I have done. How is it possible that so many people can be impacted by external circumstances? And I wanted to really bring together 30 years of research study into methodologies that can help people transform their lives and transform businesses and the way we treat one another. So in 2012, I decided to run my own seminars, workshops, and start teaching people everything I've learned. As part of that journey, I did another MBA course, and I published my first book, A Path to Wisdom: How to Live a Healthy, Balanced, and Peaceful Life. Something that I observed during those crises, a lot of people were seeking, a lot of people don't have that inner peace, a lot of people don't have that work-life balance, and pretty much people in pursuit of entrepreneurship or wealth building and abundance building or other things in their life, they lose their health, their relationship. So that book became almost like, now it's been 14 times international bestseller, and still every year reaches that status. It helped me set the foundation of my business and integrating my knowledge when it comes to spirituality, when it comes to psychology, because I did a dual degree, engineering and psychology, and helped a lot of people around the world as a result. So that was the start of my entrepreneurial journey.
A very long journey. What would you say, if you can say, how many things did you learn as far as your lessons from being a soldier in the Civil War, as well as ending up homeless? What were some of the things you learned that allowed you to get to where you are today?
Well, I mean, we can have a long conversation about that, Cassie. It's because, I was in the war for 14 months. And every second in the war, it's a lesson. Just watching what's happening in Ukraine at the moment, for me, it's almost like a replay of that civil war, because we had similar thing happening in former Yugoslavia and the Serbian regime, which is, pretty much Russian. And, you learn to appreciate first and foremost every second of your life, because you don't know the next second whether you're going to believe or not. You start to learn lifelong skills of survival, how to survive in a place where, there's 99% chances of you dying. You heightened your intuition because, you have to pretty much listen at all sides where the threat is coming. So my senses were developed to be able to listen afar. And then, I learned to survive with almost 4 hours of sleep, sometimes 2 hours of sleep, and function the next day like I had 20 hours of sleep. I learned to appreciate life and, that tomorrow may never come. So to live in a most empowering way in every second, rather than sort of thinking, if something happened to me, I wish I did this. So I've learned not to live with wishes, but to act upon what I'm here to do and help. Those are just some of the things.
And how did you, what advice would you give? Because I'm pretty sure when you're in, whether it's homelessness or whether you're a soldier in a war, your mentality, your mental state may not be where it needs to be. So did you learn during that time or after the importance of dealing with your mental state, and how do you deal with that? Because sometimes you're not necessarily in control over the physical state you're in, or whether you're living in a home, your child living in a home with a abusive parent or whatever the case may be. How did you learn how to deal with your mind and your mental ability that you wouldn't go out of your mind during those times?
Well, one of the things during those, existential threats, I call them, it's one of the gifts that I received from my parents is the gift of, going within and being able to still the mind when, your amygdala is asking you to run and, to hide and all of that. So I went back into some of the spiritual principles that my parents taught me and meditating. But taking that to a whole new level was after I arrived in England, when, I continued to live homeless for almost 6 months until I found my first job. Then I ended up working 3 to 5 jobs for 10 years to pay for my education. But through that process, I invested working with different therapists, different healers. I've read over almost 15,000 books. I learned to speed read. I invested a lot in training, but also I put every penny I was earning into my schooling. And when your mind is consistently receiving new information in a new environment and you apply that information consistently, sooner or later, your mind, your psychology gets upgraded with this new knowledge and gets integrated. So therefore, my mental state consistently improved because I never stopped learning.
So you said you read over 50,000 books, and then of course, I'm sure in living life and reading, you realized that you had something to share. And so I know you've written a few books. The first book you wrote, give us the title, and why did you feel you needed to write that book, and what were you sharing for the reader?
The first book, A Path to Wisdom, How to Live a Balanced, Healthy, and Peaceful Life, was pretty much an inspiration of all the struggles that I overcame. And then observing the world and so many people out there struggling, including in the corporate world, where people pretty much didn't have peace in themselves. And when they don't have peace in themselves, they don't have peace in the team, they don't have peace in the organizations. And the impact that can have when it comes to productivity, performance, when it comes to inspiring team motivation, all of that. But also, as the financial crisis happened, I saw so many people, homeless. I saw so many people going to the job center. I saw so many families being impacted by that. I saw people committing suicide. Suicide rates went up. I saw people going through divorce. So I wanted to put together all of the knowledge in a most and create very effective, having worked with computers and technologies from the beginning of, internet and studying engineering and developing software and hardware and all those networks that pretty much connected everything that we see today. I knew the mind works in the same way. So I wanted to create some kind of codes and methods that people can use to upgrade their mind and be able to be step ahead of adversity and being able to navigate through adversity easy, so they can maintain that inner equilibrium that is needed for us to thrive in life. So that's what really was the inspiration behind Path to Wisdom. And I spent almost like 12 weeks in meditation to put together those 25 principles, which are embodied in 5-step methodology. And the acronym is ALARM. Because, if we look at us as human beings in our perfect nature, we are divine in our nature. And then what happens throughout life, we get this external programming and injected values and beliefs that pretty much creates a false sense of identity of who we truly are, with that God-given intelligence that, if used in a way, can really create amazing results for yourself. So, but what happens is most of us, because of the noise and the, I would say, distractions we get on the outside, we stop listening to that inner alarm until it's too late. That inner alarm, it's part of that, you may call it intuition, you may call it God-given alarm, that every cell in our body, when it's out of equilibrium, eventually, if we attend to it, it's going to show up as an illness. And illness is the last alarm the body is trying to communicate to you, and we're not listening. So that alarm applies to any key area of your life when we are not in touch with our own spirituality, when we are not in touch with our mind in a way that it's harmonious with ourselves, when our emotions take over and take the best of us, when our relationships with ourselves, with others don't work, when our intimate relationship don't work, when we have conflicts with children, with family members, with friends, society, when businesses don't grow and don't thrive, when careers make you feel stop and stuck, as well as basically if we're trying to do something in socially. So this is how I created the acronym ALARM, and then how do we then listen to that alarm so we can create inspired actions for us to be in that equilibrium, and our body and mind and heart to be in peace with itself, so you can show up as the best version. Now, as I created the global effect after I published my book, and having clients all over the world hire me to work with them, companies to work with them, one thing I noticed that I wanted to write my next book was how lonely people have become, and the impact technology has on our mental well-being, emotional well-being, on people, on society, on children, on education, on every aspect of reality. And I remember coaching one of the CEOs of the big banks in the city of London, where he's open offices, and I walk in, and after I coached him, I was asked to coach the senior team, and it was 250 people in open plan office, and people within the team did not know the team sitting behind them, and they were communicating via email, not turning around and speaking. Then in every business lounge around any airport that I've been, as I was coaching and training, people were glued to their mobile phones. Even the most extraordinary person to pass by you, nobody will even say hello. You travel on the tube here in London, people are afraid even to engage in a conversation. And also, I was born in Macedonia, and I remember meeting Mother Teresa. My mother took me to meet Mother Teresa, and she was huge on when it comes to helping people, when it comes to loneliness. So I said, I want to really look at this global problem we've created and write a book about it. And that's what inspired me to write the second book, which is #Loneliness, the Virus of the Modern Age. And the reason I called it hashtag is the first book published in the world with the hashtag in front of the title of the book, to appeal to the younger generation, where they have become technologically dependent and depressed. So I wrote in there to, first and foremost, to share the journey that took me to the understanding of the importance of oneness in self and with others, and the interconnectivity that exists with life. But also to give them a way of connecting with their own pain, with their own journey, with their own experiences in life that makes them feel disconnected, and then create a new way of thinking that helps them live a more of a connected life. Now, that also won a few global awards and opened up many other doors for training, for speaking, working with more clients around the world, dealing with even bigger problems, creating some different campaigns around elderly who are even more lonely than ever before. And then I was approached to write the next book, which is Fit for Purpose Leadership, and with a couple of amazing leaders around the world. And my subject was specifically on the work that I've done with a lot of business owners and leaders, which is around burnout, around stress, around frustrations, and around suicidal thoughts when it comes to leaders. From the pressures that the leaders in certain companies have and the kind of image and the kind of decisions and choices they have to make that impact their well-being. So that also became many times bestseller. And during COVID, at the beginning of COVID, I was working with a multi-millionaire client, US client in Dominican Republic. And little I knew that when I come back to England, everything is going to shut down. But as I came to England, within 2 weeks, all my flights were canceled. We all went into lockdown. And I said, okay, it's time for me to create something, because I knew COVID is not going to go away. And I knew the impact of it, because one of the roles I had as a senior technologist is creating risk plans and disaster recovery plans to be implemented instantly if a disaster strikes. Something that I know majority of the companies didn't have. Majority of leaders, governments, healthcare, none of them had them when COVID struck us. Everybody was learning every single day as they were going, because those plans weren't really done. And most companies actually, after the financial crash of 2008, they restricted the budgets for people to implement and secure those plans. So when I started my business, I made sure those plans were there, updated every single year. So when COVID struck, I implemented those plans. I turned my consultations into Zoom and some of my training into Zoom, and it was business as usual. But however, majority of the world got stuck at home with being left alone in fear, and also in the uncertainty that COVID created globally, economic uncertainty, family uncertainty. Suddenly parents had to face their children every single day, plus expected to work from home, plus do all those multitasking they didn't do. So I knew the mental, emotional, financial, spiritual effects will be for years to come. They will leave a cosmic trail of mental, emotional, financial implications for humanity. So I wanted to understand why the leaders behave the way they did. What are the lessons that people can learn first and foremost in their own life, so they can navigate this uncertainty and take back control. So that inspired me in the first 4 months of lockdown to start down and plan my next book, which became the Unfakable Code. And the Unfakable Code is pretty much around taking back control of you when everything sinks around you, and how to emerge like a phoenix from those situations in your life, whether it's COVID, whether it's depression, whether it's divorce, whether it's financial, it does not matter where it is, but how do you become stronger as a result, and how do you manage all those different personas that emerge in you when there's a threat, and how to become an authentic leader, and how to live freely on your terms. So I published this book about last year, 6 months ago now, and ever since won again few awards. It was in 5 categories, internationally bestseller in business categories around leadership. It's just been also entered for the Business Book Award of the Year in UK. So I wanted that solution for people to have a set of 5 principles that can help them bring them back into authentic living, leading, and loving. And then as the second lockdown happened, after I finished the first draft, I wanted to honor what has been always at the back of my head. I wanted to write spiritually channeled poems that people can grow their spirit. So with that, I wrote my first 12 poems, which got published by a European publisher with a few other poets around the world. And those won again It's been a couple of months now since it got published. It's won few poetry awards, but I published my first 12 spiritually channeled poems for specific 12 individuals, that if you read the poems, it will awaken in you those traits and those qualities of the people I wrote the poem for.
Thank you so much for sharing all of that. I was actually going to ask you about the Unfakable Code because the name struck me. So you said it was about rising during a fall. Why exactly though did you call it the Unfakable Cold? What does that mean?
Excellent question, Casey. Well, just the way we have the retina unique blueprint that we have, or fingerprint, we as individuals, even our DNA is authentic to us. We pretty much are unfakeable, meaning nobody can copy you. Now, in a world where we put so many different masks, people try to copy other people and try to become other people, but not their true self. So the Unfakable Code is about creating this code in people's minds that brings them back to who they are, while external, I would say, people who inspire us are extremely important to our lives. But it can also be toxic if that relationship is you want to become that person, but not the person who you are meant to be, which is extremely authentic. And I believe every human being has this authenticity built in from the point of birth, but we lose our way as we go through life and as we get conditioned in different societies, schooling, work, friends, experiences, and we forget who we truly are in our essence. So I wanted people to have those 5 principles they can hold on to and use them on a daily basis for them to be the unfakeable individual they were born to be.
Thank you for watching The ReadyWriter. This interview is not over. It continues with healthy and wealthy conversations on April 7th, 2020. Tune in then. Thank you for watching, and thank you to our guest, Tony Selimi.